Mobile elevated work platforms, also known as aerial lifts, are popular on a variety of job sites. One reason is that they provide elevated work surfaces that can be easier and faster to move and position than scaffolds or ladders. However, ease of use doesn't mean that they are necessarily safer than a scaffold or ladder. Using proper safe practices on and around mobile elevated work platforms, or MEWPs, is critical to preventing dangerous workplace incidents. When you have completed this course, you should be able to identify MEWP groups and types, as well as employee roles, responsibilities, and training requirements. You should also be able to recognize the requirements for proper MEWP setup, pre-work planning and inspections, and safe operations, including hazard recognition. Finally, you should be able to identify the requirements for maintenance and routine inspection of the MEWP. Lesson 1. Mobile Elevated Work Platform Groups, Types, Roles and Responsibilities. The American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, defines a mobile elevated work platform as a machine/device intended for moving persons, tools, and material to working positions, and consisting of a work platform with controls and an extending structure mounted on a mobile chassis. ANSI classifies MEWPs by both group and type. Group A MEWPs are those where the work platform is not meant to extend beyond the tipping lines of the MEWP. Tipping lines must be determined by the manufacturer, but generally this means the platform only goes straight up and down or does not articulate further than the outriggers. Examples of Group A MEWPs are scissor lifts and vertical lifts. Group B MEWPs are those designed to allow the work platform to extend beyond the tipping lines. Examples of Group B MEWPs are telescoping and articulating boom lifts. Mobile elevated work platforms are also divided into 3 types. Type 1 MEWPs are not designed to allow travel while the work platform is extended. The work platform must be retracted and properly stowed before Type 1 MEWPs can be moved. Type 2 and 3 MEWPs both allow travel while the work platform is extended. Type 2 MEWPs can be driven in the extended position from controls on the chassis, while Type 3 MEWPs can be driven in the extended position using controls on the work platform itself. MEWPs which can be driven from both the chassis and the work platform are considered a combination of Type 2 and Type 3. ANSI defines different roles related to MEWP operations. The owner is the person or business entity that owns or rents the MEWP. The user is the person or business entity who has ultimate care and custody of the MEWP. In many cases, the owner and the user will be the same, such as a small business owner who rents a scissor lift for employees. In other cases, the user is someone the owner has designated to be in charge of the MEWP, such as the general manager of a store or the foreman of a job site. An operator is a person qualified to operate MEWP controls, and an occupant is a person on the work platform. Again, these might be the same person or not. For example, on a standard scissor lift, it is common for there to be only one occupant who is also the operator. But on a truck-mounted Type 2 personnel lift, the operator stays on the ground while the occupants go up on the lift. In many boom lifts, it is also common to have one operator on the ground and another on the work platform. Finally, a supervisor is any person assigned to monitor the operator's performance during work with the MEWP. In many cases, the user and the supervisor will be the same person, but in larger operations, the user may designate others as supervisors. The mobile elevated work platform owner must provide all required training to employees and keep proper training records. Any MEWP dealer or owner who sells, leases, rents, or otherwise provides a MEWP for use must be able and willing to familiarize the recipient of the MEWP with its functions if requested, and must either provide training or must advise the recipient of where to obtain training for themselves and their employees. The owner must ensure they have all proper safety documentation for the MEWP, including manuals and safety bulletins. Finally, the owner must ensure that the MEWP is registered with the manufacturer and must be able to receive any safety-related bulletins the manufacturer sends out related to the MEWP. The user has some of the biggest responsibilities when it comes to MEWP safety. Remember that the user is the person who is immediately responsible for the MEWP. The user is responsible for ensuring that any and all personnel who operate or occupy the MEWP are properly trained, qualified, and authorized for their job duties. This includes developing and implementing a written safe use program and ensuring retention of all applicable records. The user is also responsible for ensuring that the MEWP operator is physically and mentally fit to operate the MEWP safely and must take all necessary steps to prevent unauthorized or incapable individuals from operating the MEWP. This includes ensuring that a trained and qualified supervisor is present to monitor the MEWP operations and prevent unauthorized use. Every person involved with MEWP operations, including users, supervisors, operators, and occupants, is responsible for following good safety practices and complying with all applicable MEWP safe use policies and procedures. Lesson 2. Mobile Elevated Work Platform Training Requirements. Anyone operating or occupying a MEWP must be properly trained, qualified, fit, and authorized for the work they are performing. This training must be presented in a manner the trainee can understand. MEWP occupants do not need formal training or certification before working on a MEWP, but they do need to receive basic site orientation. This orientation includes information about hazards and hazardous locations on the site, and the warning signs, rules, and other controls they will need to understand and observe. They must also receive a pre-job safety briefing to understand the tasks to be performed and the risks and controls involved. Mobile Elevated Work Platform operators must complete formal training consisting of theory, familiarization, and hands-on instruction, and evaluation over the intended use and safe operation of the MEWP. Training must address any inspection, maintenance, and security procedures the employee will have to carry out. The theory portion must include the information in this course, as well as general information about the types of MEWPs available on site, their features, manufacturer instructions, and how to choose the correct MEWP for the job. Theory training also includes the employer's policies and procedures, the site's MEWP safe use program, and the responsibilities of each person working with the MEWP, including roles and responsibilities during malfunctions or emergency situations. Before a trainee can be authorized to operate a particular MEWP, they must operate the model under the direction and evaluation of a qualified trainer. The trainer must verify that the trainee knows how to perform pre-start and worksite inspections, carry out daily checks, and plan travel routes. The trainee must also be able to perform other pre-start procedures, including recognizing the purpose and use of placards and safety decals, identifying applicable safety rules, and confirming that the manual and other necessary paperwork is stored with the MEWP in its proper location. Next, the trainee must demonstrate understanding of features, operating characteristics and limitations of the specific model of MEWP, including maximum intended load, load capacity, and reach capacity. They must also demonstrate understanding of the purpose and function of the MEWP components, controls, and devices, including platform, ground, and emergency descent controls, as well as stabilizing devices such as outriggers and extendable axles. Finally, they must be able to demonstrate proper operation of the MEWP, including proper setup, parking, and securement procedures. Every worksite that uses a mobile elevated work platform must have one or more designated supervisors. Supervisors must be qualified to observe and evaluate both the safety and efficacy of the work itself, and the performance and proficiency of the MEWP operators and occupants. They must be trained to select the correct MEWP for the job, and trained over all necessary procedures for the inspection, maintenance, use, application, and operation of all MEWPs that may be used by the employees they supervise. This includes training over the potential hazards and appropriate hazard controls associated with using the MEWP, and knowledge of all federal, state, and employer rules, regulations, and standards that apply to the use of MEWPs on the job sites they supervise. Finally, they must be trained to properly evaluate and document operator proficiency, including knowing when and how to require retraining. Users must maintain training records for all employees. Users can provide and document their own training if they are qualified to do so, or they can hire or designate a qualified employee or outside training organization to deliver training on their behalf. Training records must include the name of the entity providing the training, such as the employer or a hired training company, and the name of the person delivering and supervising the training. Records must also clearly identify the classification of the MEWP covered in the training, the date the training was completed, the name of the trainee, and the period of time the training is valid, if applicable. Operators must be evaluated for proficiency on a regular, ongoing basis. This evaluation must include visual observations and must be formally documented. Retraining must be provided if the operator's training expires, if evaluations show a deterioration in the operator's performance, or if the operator is involved in an accident or near miss with the MEWP. Retraining must also be provided anytime a new or significantly different MEWP technology is introduced, anytime new or significantly different hazards arise in the work area, and anytime the operator has not operated a MEWP for an extended period of time. Lesson 3. Setup and pre-work procedures. Before using a MEWP, a qualified person must perform a risk assessment that identifies the task to be undertaken, along with the location and timing and all associated risks. Once the hazards and risks have been identified, the qualified person will identify the procedures and control measures needed to protect workers. The qualified person will consider the task to be performed, worksite constraints, ground conditions, site access, and proximity to other workers or the public. Based on the risk assessment, an appropriate MEWP must be selected for the job, and a safe work plan must be created and implemented. The findings of the risk assessment and the details of the safe work plan must be communicated to everyone involved before starting work, before the job starts, and periodically throughout longer jobs. The risk assessment must be reviewed to determine if any changes have occurred that could affect the safe operation of the MEWP. If changing conditions require modifications to the risk assessment or safe work plan, these must be communicated to everyone involved before work resumes. Part of the risk assessment involves checking the ground conditions to make sure the surface can safely and properly support mobile elevated work platform operations. Improper ground conditions can lead to the machine becoming out of level, unstable, and potentially dangerous. The qualified person will need to identify any potential stability hazards that exist and provide the operator with warning and instructions for proper setup and maintaining stability. This includes making sure the surface is strong and stable enough to support the weight of the MEWP and is properly prepared and maintained for safe MEWP operations. Surface strength and stability calculations must take into account surface material, soil type, moisture levels, and the presence of subsurface voids, such as cellars, basements, culverts, and pipes. Where necessary, foundations or spreader pads may be required to improve stability. The MEWP operator is responsible for inspecting ground conditions before and during MEWP operations and ensuring that all hazards are being properly addressed. The operator must check that the surface remains flat and stable and can handle the pressure of the MEWP. This includes checking for slopes, drop-offs, or holes, including those that might be concealed, such as under snow or grass. It also includes inspecting for potential overhead and floor obstructions and bumps, including electrical cables and debris, electrical hazards such as power lines and equipment, and the presence of traffic from vehicles, personnel, or other mobile equipment. The operator must also check for the presence or development of hazardous locations, atmospheres, and conditions, including wind and weather conditions. This includes hazards created by operating MEWPs in enclosed spaces and the need for proper ventilation. If potential hazards are identified during the operator's workplace inspection, which are not accounted for in the safe work plan, the operator must notify their supervisor and must avoid the hazard until it is addressed. At the start of each day or shift, The operator must perform a pre-start inspection and function test on the MEWP. The operator must check the condition and test the functionality of all operating and emergency controls, audible and visual alarms and beacons, and all personal protective devices that will be worn by operators and occupants. They must also check for leaks in any fuel, hydraulic, or air systems, check for any damage to electrical cables and wiring harnesses, and check the operation and performance of brakes. The operator must check the condition of tires, wheels, and wheel fasteners, including air pressure where applicable. The operator must check all appropriate fluid levels, including engine oil and coolant, and verify the presence of all necessary instructions, warnings, control markings, and operator's manuals. They must also check the general condition of MEWP structures, including the work platform, fall protection systems, extending structures, stabilizing structures, outriggers, pins, securing devices, and any other items suggested by the manufacturer. Finally, the operator must do a general check for cleanliness and general signs of damage, including checking for any loose, damaged, worn, or missing parts. Never set up or operate a MEWP on grades, slopes, ramps, or curves greater than the limits recommended by the manufacturer. Check the user manual for limits before parking or setting up on an uneven surface. On any surface, set the brakes and follow all recommendations for the use of wheel chocks and stabilizing devices, such as outriggers and stabilizing axles. Outriggers are the structures that come out of or attach to the side of the unit to provide a wider, more stable base. Stabilizing axles can be adjusted to change the wheel base of the MEWP, such as extending the wheels out further to the side or adjusting the angle to account for minor slope. Both features improve stability and prevent unwanted movement while the platform or boom is extended. If using outriggers, make sure they are resting either on pads or a flat, level surface. If level indicators or warning alarms ever show that operating conditions are nearing manufacturer limits, the operator must lower the work platform and reset the MEWP to a level position. Finally, set up work zone warnings such as cones and signs around the work area to alert workers and vehicles to avoid the lift area. Before work can begin, all operators and occupants must understand the task to be performed and the risks involved, including stability risks and how their actions can affect stability. All occupants on the work platform must be familiar with the hazards identified by the risk assessment and the rules, policies, and procedures they must follow, including the use of fall protection and other personal protective equipment. The operator must ensure the occupants have the knowledge they need to work safely and must verify that they are wearing all required PPE and observing all appropriate fall protection measures. The operator must provide at least one occupant with instruction on how to operate the MEWP controls in an emergency situation. These instructions do not authorize the occupant to operate the controls except during an emergency. Lesson 4. Operating a mobile elevated work platform. All MEWP occupants and operators must wear all recommended PPE for the task, work site, and environment. Always make sure your path is clear before driving the MEWP, and don't drive with a work platform elevated unless allowed by manufacturer specifications. Also check that the area above and around the MEWP is clear before raising or extending the work platform. Be careful not to let equipment such as ropes, electric cables, and hoses become entangled in the MEWP or adjacent structure or objects. If the work platform, extension, or elevating assembly becomes caught, snagged, or otherwise stuck, all operators and occupants must be safely evacuated from the work platform before attempts are made to free the MEWP. Fuels for internal combustion MEWPs are usually flammable, and MEWP batteries can produce an explosive gas while charging. Fueling or charging a MEWP should only be done in well-ventilated areas, free from ignition sources, preferably a designated location equipped with fire extinguishers. While on the work platform, always maintain a firm footing on the platform floor. Never climb on the toe board, railings, or extending structures, and never use ladders, boxes, or other devices on the work platform to reach additional heights. Most MEWPs are not designed to be entered or exited at height. Do not attempt to enter or leave a raised work platform unless directed to do so as part of an approved safe work plan or emergency procedure. Never attempt to steady the platform or improve stability by positioning the MEWP against, tied to, or restrained by another object. Objects above and beside the MEWP, such as ceilings, walls, signs, trees, poles, and electrical lines, can all pose a significant risk. If there isn't enough clearance, or if the work platform or other object moves for any reason, it can cause struck by or caught between injuries to workers, as well as falls from the platform. If workers are leaning or reaching over the railing or basket edge, they can also be crushed between the platform and the object. When working on the platform, you should always check the area for overhead hazards and avoid working near them when possible. Operators must always be aware of the clearance between the platform and any nearby objects. When working on the platform at heights, deactivate the controls on the platform anytime they are not needed, so they can't be accidentally activated if someone bumps into them. Never move the work platform or the MEWP without permission from all workers on the platform, unless it is an emergency situation. Some of the greatest hazards on MEWPs are fall and ejection hazards. Workers can fall or be thrown from the work platform if the MEWP is unstable and tips over or collapses, if it is struck by another vehicle, or if workers are not following safe procedures while working in the MEWP. Guardrails are often the primary form of fall protection on the work platform. They must be properly installed and positioned with all access gates and other openings properly closed or guarded before operations can begin. Personal fall arrest or fall restraint systems must also be used on Group B MEWPs, and anytime they are called for by the employer, manufacturer, or applicable regulations. Fall protection systems must be ANSI and OSHA compliant and meet manufacturer specifications. They must be attached to the MEWP using attachment points provided by the manufacturer for that express purpose. Never tie off to another structure. If you are required to wear a fall protection system on the job, your employer must train you to use it properly. Ask your supervisor if you need additional training in fall protection. The work platform itself can also be an overhead hazard for workers on the ground, and tools or supplies falling off the platform could be very dangerous to people below. Always cordon off the area below the platform and restrict access to that area when possible, and make sure personnel in the area are alerted before the MEWP moves. Use safety devices like lanyards and nets to reduce the risk of dropped object hazards. MEWP platforms should only ever be used to carry tools or materials which are needed for the operation and can be safely handled by a person working from the platform. Tools and materials on the work platform must be properly distributed and secured before driving the MEWP or positioning the platform, and should remain secured when not in use. Never carry materials larger than the platform or supported on the guardrails, unless this use is approved by the manufacturer. Never carry materials outside of the work platform, except in a manufacturer-approved carrier designed for that purpose. MEWPs must only be used in ways the manufacturer intended. The total weight of workers, tools, and materials should never exceed the rated load for the MEWP. Load sensing systems are useful tools, but the operator must not rely on them and must independently ensure that the rated load is never exceeded. Never engage in horseplay, reckless operation, or stunt driving on or with the MEWP. Do not alter the MEWP or use it as a crane, jack, prop, or supporting structure unless the user has written approval from the manufacturer or an engineer for that specific alteration or use. Never alter or disable safety devices, alarms, or indicators, and never exceed the rated forces and operating configurations of the MEWP. Lesson 5. Hazardous conditions. Weather conditions such as wind, ice, rain, and fog can impact MEWP operations. Never operate MEWPs outdoors during thunderstorms or lightning. Some MEWPs become unstable in even light winds. Others may be designed to handle moderate winds, but high winds are always dangerous. Never operate any MEWP in winds above 25 miles per hour or above the manufacturer's recommended wind speed limit, whichever is lower. In even light winds, take special care when handling materials that can act as sails, such as panels and metal sheets. Other weather conditions such as fog or rain need to be accounted for in the Safe Work Plan, and the plan must be reassessed if weather conditions worsen. Other hazardous conditions that can affect MEWP operations, such as flammable atmospheres or working on public roads around traffic, also need to be accounted for in the Safe Work Plan. If a new hazardous condition develops or is discovered during operations, work must stop until the hazard can be assessed or corrected, or the plan can be updated to address it. While operating or occupying a MEWP, you must be aware of power lines and other electrical hazards nearby. Touching energized power lines can kill a person instantly. Even if you don't touch the lines, you can still be injured or killed by an arc flash, which is a sudden explosion caused by electricity traveling through the air. Working close to energized lines or other electrical hazards can only be done by qualified electrical workers using special equipment and precautions. Unless your supervisor has verified that lines or equipment have been completely de-energized and an electrically safe working condition has been established, always assume power lines and other electricity sources are hazardous. Keep yourself and all tools, equipment, and parts of the MEWP at least 10 feet or 3 meters away. Always have a clear view of any potential electrical conductors, such as power lines or transformers, before moving the MEWP or the work platform. Make sure to leave plenty of clearance between the MEWP and the electrical hazard at all times. Accounting for additional movement such as swaying in the wind or bouncing over bumps in the road. Be extra careful about rules such as driving slowly and not leaning over the platform rails when working in the vicinity of electrical hazards. Except for loading and unloading, never drive or operate a MEWP from a position on a vehicle, trailer, rail car, boat, scaffold, or similar equipment unless the application and method are approved in writing by the manufacturer. If vehicles or other moving equipment are present on the worksite while MEWP operations are underway, special precautions must be taken. The Safe Work Plan should identify all hazards related to the traffic or equipment and how to protect against them. Use and observe any warnings and safety devices required by the employer or local ordinance, including barricades, ropes, cones, flags and flaggers, lights, and safety signs. If the MEWP will be operated in conjunction with another piece of moving equipment, such as a crane, the operation must be properly planned with a system to coordinate work and communicate between equipment operators. The operator must have a plan for dealing with foreseeable contingencies and emergencies. If the MEWP must be driven on a public road, take all necessary precautions and obey all applicable state and local traffic laws. If the MEWP must be unloaded from a transporting vehicle on a public road, take precautions to protect the people involved and alert the public. This can include, but is not limited to, cones or other barriers, road signs and signaling devices, and flagging personnel to warn other vehicles. All people involved in the operation should wear appropriate PPE, including reflective clothing, and must comply with all applicable federal, state, and local regulations. When shutting down, park the MEWP in a suitable designated parking area. Place the platform in the stowed position. Turn off the engine or motor, apply the brakes, and take the necessary steps to prevent unauthorized use, including removing and securing the keys. Whenever possible, MEWPs should be parked in a secure area with restricted access. If you must park on a sloped surface, consult the manufacturer's recommendations to ensure the MEWP can handle the slope. Set the brakes and use wheel chocks to prevent rolling. Do not leave the MEWP unattended with the work platform elevated unless approved by the manufacturer. The Safe Work Plan must include emergency plans for situations such as workers being trapped on or falling from an elevated work platform. During work, there must always be at least one person on the platform and another person on site but not on the platform who knows when and how to use the emergency controls. The plan must include rescue procedures if the work platform cannot be lowered or becomes unstable. A fall from the platform when using a fall arrest system will require a rescue plan for getting the affected worker down safely. Depending on the situation, The plan may involve self-rescue by the affected worker, assisted rescue by other workers, or technical rescue from emergency services. Any rescue plan should be designed to limit the amount of time a worker will remain suspended after a fall. A written fall rescue plan must be included in the company's training manual. All occupants who will use a fall arrest system must be trained over procedures to follow if they fall or see someone else fall. If suspension trauma or other injury or illness is suspected, the affected worker must receive immediate professional medical treatment. Rescues should only be carried out by properly trained and authorized personnel, following company procedures. Never use another MEWP or other piece of equipment to assist in a rescue, unless proper procedures for doing so safely are included in the rescue plan. Lesson 6. Maintenance and repairs. Frequent inspections are more thorough than pre-start inspections. They involve a complete and careful inspection of all parts, functions, and controls on the MEWP, including all items specified by ANSI and by the MEWP manufacturer. Frequent inspections must be performed by a person qualified to inspect that particular make and model of MEWP. Frequent inspections must be performed before a MEWP is placed into service for the first time, before returning a MEWP to service after it was out of service for 3 or more months, and any other time it was called for by the manufacturer or employer policies. At least once every 13 months, there must be a frequent inspection that also includes verifying that the MEWP is registered with the manufacturer, checking that all manufacturer safety bulletins for the previous year were received, read, and addressed, and inspecting any additional items the manufacturer recommends checking annually. This inspection is known as the annual inspection, and the date must be properly recorded on the MEWP. Written records of all frequent and annual inspections must be kept, including the date, name of person performing the inspection, and descriptions of any issues found and how they were corrected. These records must be kept by the owner for at least 4 years. Timely maintenance is vital to preventing problems with the MEWP. All inspections and scheduled maintenance required by ANSI or the MEWP manufacturer must be carried out on a regular schedule by a qualified maintenance technician. This schedule must take into account the environment in which the MEWP is being used and any environmental factors that might speed up wear and tear, such as extreme temperatures or the presence of corrosive gases. If any problem or malfunction is discovered with the MEWP, it must be immediately removed from service until it can be corrected by a qualified repair person. All repairs must be done according to the manufacturer's instructions, using only approved parts or components. Before adjustments or repairs are performed, the MEWP must be properly powered off and locked out as required for that make and model. Modifications or additions to the MEWP should only be made with permission from the manufacturer or under the direction of a qualified engineer. Now that you've completed this course, you should be able to identify MEWP groups and types and employee roles, responsibilities, and training requirements. You should also be able to recognize the requirements for proper MEWP setup, pre-work planning and inspections, and safe operations, including hazard recognition. Finally, you should be able to identify the requirements for maintenance and routine inspection of the MEWP.